Hello everyone, welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to our latest edition of the podcast. Yes, I know I took a week off. Probably not the best week to take off with all the action that's been going on in the NBA playoffs, but don't worry, Logan Purcell will be joining me in a little bit. We're going to break all the first round matchups down for you, what's happened, what we can expect moving forward, and our analysis on some of these pretty intriguing matchups in the NBA playoffs thus far. We're also going to keep you updated on the Premier League, the Columbus Crew, as well as FC Cincinnati. We'll also keep you updated on the Indians and what's been going on with them as of late, as they're in second place in the Central Division. We'll also talk about Julio Jones rumors, and we'll get Logan's perspective and analysis on what's to come for the all-star wide receiver. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is certainly an episode of the Cleveland Sports Show you're not going to want to miss out on. Logan and I have so much to break down and discuss. It's all coming up right here on the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. We took a week off, but we are back. Logan Purcell will be joining me in a few minutes to talk about the NBA playoffs. We're going to discuss all the highlights and the matchups and what has happened in these last couple of weeks. We're also going to break down some soccer for you. I'll be doing that first, as always, and then we'll talk about the Indians, and Julio Jones will be our NFL topic of discussion for today. But first, you know how we kick things off on the Cleveland Sports Show. We've got our sports fact of the day for you, and today is a special day for Patriots owner Robert Kraft. It is his 80th birthday. Today is June 5th, 2021, and Robert Kraft is 80 years old today, wishing him a very happy birthday. Now, Robert Kraft bought the New England Patriots for $172 million back in 1994. Now, with the success that the franchise has had with 6 Super Bowl rings and the amazing careers of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the squad is now worth $4.4 billion. That's right. 6 Super Bowls can really help your franchise in terms of value. Just look at what happened to the New England Patriots. Now, some additional facts about Robert Kraft that you may not have known. He actually, his first sports team was the Boston Lobsters of World Team Tennis. Now, when I think of Boston Lobster, I think of probably delicious lobster right off the coast. But the Boston Lobsters were actually a world tennis team that Kraft, along with 5 other business associates, would acquire, and this dates all the way back to 1974. So even in his early years, Kraft was very intrigued in terms of being associated with the sports world. Additionally, he founded the New England Revolution soccer team in 1996, 2 years after he bought the New England Patriots. He extended his reach of world sports by founding the New England Revolution in 1996. Now, the Revolution play in the same stadium as the Patriots at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, and I did not know that. That is a very interesting sports fact. He founded the New England Revolution in 1996, and it all stems from our original sports fact of the day. Happy birthday, 80th birthday for Robert Kraft, looking to win possibly a 7th Super Bowl ring. With this new squad that New England has, they certainly can contend, especially with the talents of Mac Jones and Cam Newton at quarterback. We'll see what they do in the division. I am very much looking forward to seeing what the Patriots can do with this revamped roster. They went all out in free agency, and they're looking to make some noise this coming NFL season. Now it's time to keep you updated with what's going on in the Premier League. And the Premier League season has officially concluded about a week ago. Sunday, May 23rd, was the last slate of games in the Premier League, and it is official. Manchester City have won the Premier League. They were in a pretty commanding position in that first place spot. They finished 12 points ahead of second place Manchester United. Manchester City had 27 wins on the season with 5 draws and 6 losses. Manchester United 6 wins less than Man City. They had 21 wins, 11 draws, 6 losses for a combined total of 74 points. Liverpool finished in third place in the Premier League. They had 20 wins, 9 draws, 9 losses for 69 points. Chelsea finished in fourth place with 19 wins, 10 draws, and 9 losses for 67 total points. And then Leicester City finished in 5th place with 20 wins, 6 draws, 12 losses. That gets you a combined total of 66 points. So those are the top 5 teams that finished in the Premier League this year. Teams that were relegated to the lower leagues due to their very poor records. The way this works is if you have one of the top 3 worst records in the Premier League, you are relegated to a lower league in England. Now, the teams that were relegated this year were Fulham. They only finished with 28 points on the season. West Brom finished with only 26 points. And then Sheffield United, who only finished with 23 points, have all been relegated to those lower leagues of England. Now, stats in the Premier League. Your top goal scorer is Harry Kane of Tottenham Hotspur. Kane finished with 23 goals on the season, and Mohamed Salah finished in second place, 22 goals on the season for him. Bruno Fernandes finished in third place, the Manchester City player, with 18 goals on this season, and then tying for fourth place, each with 17 goals, are Patrick Bamford of Leeds United and Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur. Harry Kane also finished top in the league in assists with 14 assists on the season. Bruno Fernandes, who is the third leading goal scorer in the league, finished second in total assists when he tied with Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City, each of those two players with 12 assists on the season. Jack Grealish and Son Heung-min tied for third place, each of those two players with 10 assists to finish off the season. Now, the upcoming season in the Premier League, the 2021-22 schedule, will begin on Saturday, August 14th of this year, and then will conclude on Sunday, May 22nd, 2022. So we only have a couple more months till the Premier League will kick off, but soccer fans, don't cry because the MLS is back in session. It's been going on for about a month now, and the Columbus Crew are definitely a team that you're going to want to keep your eye on. So the Columbus Crew, in between our episodes, our most recent episode and the last episode from a couple weeks ago, Crew have had 2 games thus far. They finished up a road trip in New York City. It was a 3-game road trip, and the Crew got a much-needed win with an 0-2 record. On this 3-game road trip heading into New York City, the Crew get a 2-1 victory over New York City FC. 2 goals by Crew superstar Lucas Zelarayan helped the Crew come back in this game. They were actually down 1-0 early on. In the 18th minute, Ismail Tajori scored for New York City to put them up 1-0, but 2 late goals by Zelarayan, one in the 82nd minute and then one in added time, gets the Crew a much-needed 2-1 victory over New York City. The Crew, although they were outshot by New York City 17-10, they did control the possession. Crew with 57% of the possession in this game compared to just 43% for New York City FC. Consequently, the Crew had a lot more passes than New York City. 501 passes in this game for the Crew compared to 389 for New York City FC. After that matchup against New York, the Crew returned home Saturday, May 29th for a rematch against Toronto FC. Now, the last time the Crew saw Toronto was back on May 12th. Toronto defeated Columbus by a final score of 2-0. That was game one of that three-game road stint I was talking about for the Crew. Now, this one, Saturday, May 29th, the Columbus Crew get revenge on Toronto with another 2-1 scoreline. Luis Diaz Espinosa in the 12th minute got the party started for the Crew, giving them an early 1-0 lead. And then in the 21st minute, Yassi Zardes, Crew superstar forward, put the Columbus up 2-0. In the 52nd minute, Ayo Akinola of Toronto scored a goal, but they were never able to get that tying goal, and the Crew hold on in a nail-biter 2-1. So a pair of 2-1 victories for the Crew gets them two much-needed wins. If we look at the standings here in the MLS, Columbus is now in 6th place out of 14 in the MLS's Eastern Conference. The Crew, with 7 matches played so far, they have 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses, for a total of 11 points. New England leads the Eastern Conference in the Premier League with 17 points on the season. Philadelphia comes in at 2nd place. They have 14 points on the season thus far, with 4 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. If we take a look at the Western Conference, the Seattle Sounders, who fell to the hands of the Crew in last year's MLS Cup final, looking for some revenge, and they have a good start to the season thus far. 18 points for them, 5 wins, 3 draws. They have not lost a game yet. They are the only team in the MLS's Western Conference who have not even lost a game. There are a total of 2 teams in the MLS who have not lost a game yet. I just mentioned the Seattle Sounders. And in the Eastern Conference, it's actually Nashville who have not lost a game yet. Nashville, they are in 7th place in the Eastern Conference. They have 2 wins, 5 draws, but no losses on the season thus far, which gives them a total of 11 points on the season. Quick update with FC Cincinnati as well, Ohio's other MLS soccer team, who have had a more rough start on the season thus far. Now, only 2 games to report for FC Cincinnati as well. Saturday, May 22nd, was Cincinnati's most recent road game. They were playing against Montreal and got a much-needed win. This was actually a come-from-behind win for Cincinnati, a 2-1 victory over Montreal. In the 56th minute, a goal scored by Montreal put Cincinnati down 1-0. However, once again, late heroics take over. Jurgen Locadia in the 70th minute tied the game 14 minutes later to tie this game at 1 goal apiece. And then in the 86th minute, in the closing minutes of the game, Gustavo Vallecilla scored to put FC Cincinnati up 2-1. FC Cincinnati would then retain that lead to get themselves a much-needed victory. However, Cincinnati would return home only a week later to face off against New England Revolution and would lose that game 1-0. And they would lose in the second half in the 70th minute due to a goal from Adam Buksha, which put New England up 1-0, and Cincinnati just never able to recover from that, got a loss in their most recent game. Now, FC Cincinnati's next game is not till Saturday, June 19th, where they take on the Colorado Rapids. They will then go up against Chicago on June 23rd. 3 days later, they'll be going up against Toronto FC on June 26th. Now, if we look at the standings for FC Cincinnati in particular, they are at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings thus far in the MLS. Only 1 win, 1 draw for Cincinnati, but 4 losses, which have really been detrimental in the tables. They only have 4 points on the season thus far, and that actually ties for the lowest number of points for a team in the season thus far in the MLS. Chicago is the Chicago Fire, the only other MLS team with 4 points. So Chicago and Cincinnati, the two teams with the lowest number of points in the MLS this season. And that concludes our soccer news this week on the Cleveland Sports Show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with some NBA talk. The NBA playoffs. I mean, this has been a very wild playoffs. I can't remember the NBA playoffs being this insane. And Logan Purcell, Nordonia freshman, who is joining me now, we're going to talk about this and break it all down, Logan, because this has been one heck of a playoff year in the NBA. Let's start with the Eastern Conference. We'll take that side, and we're going to break down each series because 7 of the 8 first-round series have concluded. The only one that has not finished yet is the Clippers-Mavericks series. We're going to break that down last. But first, let's get into this Heat-Bucks series, Logan. This was one where I had Bucks taking this thing in 6 or 7. You actually had the Miami Heat taking this one, and I don't think anyone was thinking this. Bucks sweep the Miami Heat. The only competitive game in this series, Logan, was Game 1, where Chris Middleton hit a game winner in overtime to defeat Milwaukee, as Milwaukee defeated the Heat 109-107. The rest of the games were absolute blowouts. Game 2 for the Bucks, 132-98 victory. We look at Game 3, 113-84 victory for Milwaukee. And then in Game 4, they finished the sweep in Miami. They sweep the Heat. 120-103 was the final score of Game 4. So I'm going to ask you this, Logan, because neither of us were predicting this result. You had the Heat winning this series. I had the Bucks. So are you more impressed with what Giannis was able to do and this big three of Milwaukee getting it done against the Heat, or were you more disappointed in Jimmy Butler's and Bam Adebayo's performance in this series? Because we look at games, in those blowout games, like Game 2, Jimmy Butler did not have a good scoring night. 10 points in 32 minutes for Jimmy Butler. That's not going to get it done. And Jimmy Butler really never had a breakout game in this series. So what were your thoughts on this Bucks sweep of the Miami Heat?
Well, first off, I definitely want to say that I was definitely wrong about this series. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo did his work. He did what I personally didn't expect him to do. He definitely played really well, and there's no doubt about it. But to me, the bigger story is Jimmy Butler's abysmal performance throughout all 4 games of this series.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right. Bam Adebayo is partially to blame, but let's be honest. This is Jimmy Butler's team.
Yeah.
He played similarly to how Giannis did last season against Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Giannis played all right, but it was Giannis' team, and he wasn't that guy last year.
Right.
This year he was, and Butler, they just traded places. Every single game, Jimmy Butler struggled offensively. I mean, he is quite an underrated force defensively, but Jimmy Butler just was awful offensively. It was a joke to watch.
Yeah.
And then as a team, just watching those games, for anybody that watched those games, you would see it be like, a 5-point game. But games 2 and 3 both.
Right.
But the Bucks were up like 20 or more points at halftime. Both games.
Yeah.
You just can't let that happen. And this team, I mean, they shot amazing from 3. And don't get me wrong, this team's got a couple of guys that can shoot. Chris Middleton's a sharpshooter. Brent Forbes played really well. But this is not one of those teams this isn't the 2017 Golden State Warriors where they're going to light you up with 43. It's just not like that.
Yeah.
But the Heat let them do that. But in my opinion, like I said, Giannis, there's no way you can take away any credit. He played really well, but Jimmy Butler just played awful. And that is the biggest reason that this series turned upside down the way it did.
So what are your thoughts for the next steps of what the Miami Heat should do, Logan? Because, they just got swept out of the playoffs. This is a team that last year in the NBA bubble made it all the way to the NBA Finals. And, this was a complete turnaround of a season. They were very disappointing all season long. So if you're Miami, Logan, what are your next steps? What are you looking for in the draft? What kind of free agents are you looking for? Where do the Heat go from here?
Well, I mean, honestly, I know I say this quite often, but, they might need to look to a blow-up or to a rebuild, because the problem is this team last year, I'll be honest, they had a really good run in the finals, all the way to the finals last year, forcing 6 games, or was it 5? I think it was 6 games against those Lakers.
6 games, yeah.
But the problem is right now, they're not even close to a championship. They're not even close. And to me, if you're not competing for a championship, why are you even bothering? I would say all of the top 4 teams that are in the Eastern Conference, besides maybe the Hawks, like the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Nets all have chances at a championship, all of them.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the Heat, if they were to make it, wouldn't have a chance. I would never look at the Heat and be like, they're going to beat the Nets. They might take the Sixers to 7. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And that might sound like I'm contradicting myself, since I did take the Heat to beat the Bucks. But the problem is, the teams are just built different.
Here's my thought, Logan. You were talking about that blow up the team. But if you look outside Jimmy Butler, this Miami team is fairly young. You've got guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson. You have young talent. Bam Adebayo is only been in the league for a couple of years. So how would you blow up a team? Because when you blow up a team, the overall idea is being more young, is getting that youth. The Miami Heat have that youth. So in your eyes, why would blowing up that team make sense for Miami?
When I suggest blow up, I mean more in the idea of getting rid of your best player. I look at it either you're getting rid of your best option offensively and defensively, or you're just completely blowing it up as a whole.
Okay.
So to me, I look at it from the standpoint of you got to get rid of Butler. I know he's looking for a big extension, but clearly he hasn't played. And the thing that I always argue with people about is, in the NFL, if you're not like that, I understand, because the thing is it's one game. If people play one-on-one, people have bad games. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine. He's like, well, people just have bad days. I'm like, yeah, I agree, but you can't have 4 bad games in a row. You just can't.
Right.
That's how this works. That's why it's a 7-game series and not 1-game elimination. That's why I'm a huge fan of the NFL playoffs, but I think it could be better built. I do. So I love the way the NBA is built. 7-game series, you give the stars a chance to show.
Right.
Jimmy Butler did not show. So to me, he's not worth the extension that he's going to be asking for, more than likely max, if not near.
Yeah, and this was just this may have been the most shocking first-round result we had in the playoffs in the first round this year. Let's go to another Eastern Conference matchup, Logan. Let's talk about Hawks-Knicks. Now, the Hawks defeated the New York Knicks in 5 games. They won 2 of the 3 games at Madison Square Garden. This was a game where this was a series, rather, where I had the Knicks taking this series in 7 games. I thought each team would hold serve on their home court. Not only did Atlanta serve on their home court in both games 3 and 4, but they also handled their business for 2 of the 3 games at Madison Square Garden, and Trae Young was just absolutely phenomenal. This was a series where I hear a lot of analysts on ESPN talking about skill versus will, and basically what that meant was the Hawks have the skill to win this series, and will the Knicks, can they have the will to win this series? And it turns out skill overpowered will in this playoff matchup, and the Hawks, they looked dominant in all of these games against the Knicks. It's not like they were just, game 1 was a close game, but, you're talking about games 3, 4, and even 5. The Hawks were dominant and for the majority of the games, and I was really impressed with how complete of a team they are, and they're going to give the Sixers a run for their money in the second round. We'll talk about that a little later. But Logan, I want to get your thoughts on this. The Knicks, they get bounced out in 5 games. Was this what you were expecting in the series?
Honestly, no. No, I did not expect that in the series. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Trae Young basketball for the Hawks, and I did honestly have the Knicks in 6 or 7 is what I told you 2 weeks ago. But, I mean, let me tell you, this guy Julius Randle, wow. You want to talk about a guy who performs in the regular season like nobody's business and then just doesn't do much.
Yeah.
In the postseason, don't get me wrong, the numbers were good. The numbers were all right. But it just wasn't there.
Right.
The team just did not want to play. I watched 4 of the 5 games, and, it was like Madison Square Garden was popping.
Yep.
The fans were going crazy, every steal, every dunk, every 3, it didn't matter.
Right.
Spike Lee was jumping up and down. There was no reason, but that team just didn't have it. And let me tell you, like I said, we haven't seen a lot of Trae Young postseason basketball, but this guy is cold. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
This guy just absolutely tore the roof off the building. He went to work on that Knicks squad.
To me, he's going to be the next to me, I was going to say this, Logan, but to me, I think Trae Young's going to be the next Steph Curry. I mean, you look at the range, his handles. I mean, what do you see in Steph Curry's game that he can't do, to me?
I mean, yeah, so I completely agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't say next Steph Curry per se. I mean, I completely agree with the comparison, but I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to see another Steph Curry for the next decade or two.
Yeah.
Honestly, Steph Curry is a 1 in a million type shooter. Just his ability is next level. And like I said, Trae Young is a cold dude, but I don't know, man. If he can figure out a way to add a more efficient inside game to his offense, he is going to be truly one of the most lethal offensive threats in the NBA.
Yeah.
But to me, this series, similarly to the Bucks series, I won't say it got turned on its head because really this series could have gone either way.
Right.
I don't think any analysts were going at either of these teams in less than 6 games.
Yeah.
It was just one of those series. It was similar to how we're going to look at both, or similarly to how we looked at the Lakers series.
Yeah.
Or the Clippers. Nobody took either of those teams in 4 or 5 games. It just wasn't happening.
Right.
But this Hawks team had to work. All of those games, even the loss, it was a very tough win for that next team, and they came back down 15.
You're right.
So, to me, this Hawks team, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's not a threat in the Eastern Conference. Well, they're coming. They're coming. And I remember the early preseason, we were talking about this team compared to the Cavs.
Yeah.
It's a joke. This guy, Trae Young, and I said he was the X factor of that team, and he is. This guy is lethal.
And now he has pieces around him, Logan. You're talking about guys like John Collins, Bogdanovich, who's a great shooter, Lou Williams coming off the bench. This is a team that is definitely going to be making some noise in the Eastern Conference for a while. We'll see what they do against the Sixers. We'll talk about that series in a little bit. But Hawks defeat the Knicks in 5 games. Atlanta moving on to the second round. Let's brush up on the Knicks here a little bit, Logan. I wasn't expecting this team to make the playoffs this year. They definitely exceeded expectations by a long shot. So in your eyes, Logan, has the Knicks become once again a market that that looks like it could attract a free agent? And do you think that a free agent wouldn't mind signing in New York?
Well, I mean, the problem with the Knicks, right, is just honestly, I think the past couple of years, the reason that they haven't attracted the free agents that they were looking for, we talked about a couple of years ago, it was Zion and, Kyrie, and it was Durant, and it was, all those guys. But the problem was the coaching staff, and James Dolan, and this guy, he just doesn't know what he's doing, honestly. I mean, he's about as close to a quack as there is because he just doesn't know how to run a team.
To be fair, though, we barely heard any noise about him this particular season. I really didn't hear any James Dolan news or incidences that happened.
That's completely understandable. But the problem is he already cost this team a championship. Because I believe if James Dolan was not the owner of that team, there would have been a lot more attraction for Kyrie and Durant and those guys. But
yeah.
I mean, to a degree, I understand, a lot of free agents might be looking to New York now. Now that it's not just a dump truck hole where a bunch of guys, are there, but they're all 30 and don't know how to play. You've got a couple of guys, Derrick Rose, for one.
Right.
Veteran actually played quite well in the postseason. He was the guy against this Hawks team.
Yes.
Julius Randle is a young star that is up and coming.
Yeah.
R.J. Barrett had a pretty good year compared to last year. I mean, he didn't have an awful year, but he really stepped up this year. I think there's a little bit more traction than last year, but I don't see any big-time free agents going to New York anytime soon.
Yeah, and, like you said, Logan, this is definitely a Knicks team that competes, and they grind in their games, and this is going to be a team that, the coaching staff, too, is a lot better now with Tom Thibodeau at the helm. I definitely see a bright future for this Knicks squad moving forward. Let's talk about another Eastern Conference matchup, Logan. Let's talk about the Celtics and the Nets. And, Logan, you gave the Celtics 2 games in this series. I remember you predicted Nets in 6, and I predicted Nets in 5. Well, Nets won this series in 5 games, and to be honest, Logan, with all the injuries the Celtics had, first Jaylen Brown, and then eventually it was Kemba Walker, they just stood no chance. And in Game 1, the Celtics, their stars were pretty awful. Jason Tatum didn't have a great game in Game 1. He really struggled in that second half. Kemba Walker only had 15 points. Marcus Smart, he did have 17 points in 40 minutes. But my take on the Celtics is Marcus Smart, to me, as great as a defender he is, he's really improved offensively. He cannot be your second best player, because especially in the Eastern Conference now, because you're talking about the Nets, the Sixers, the Bucks. I'm sorry, I mean, Marcus Smart really is great. He's one of my favorite players on the Celtics, but he just can't be their second best player. It has to be either Jaylen Brown or Kemba Walker and Jason Tatum. It has to be a big three, and that big three just never clicked this season. And the Nets just were dominant. They were shooting threes left and right. And Kyrie returned to Boston in games 3 and 4, and in game 4, Kyrie handled his business with 39 points. The only game the Celtics won in this series, Logan, was game 3, and it was thanks to a Herculean effort from Jason Tatum. Tatum would have 50 points. He was absolutely sensational, Logan. 41 minutes as well, 7 assists and 6 rebounds. He took over the game late in the fourth quarter. But again, the Celtics still get bounced out in 5 games. Brooklyn looks unstoppable with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. We were wondering how that offense was going to be able to collaborate. Given the fact that they only played, 7-8 games with each other in the regular season, not that many. So eyebrows were raised heading into these playoffs, and it seems to me that the Nets have answered all of those questions with this gentleman's sweep of the Celtics. So, Logan, I'll hand it over to you. Brooklyn Nets and Celtics, what were your thoughts from this series?
I'm kind of torn here. I mean, for the Celtics, first off, I do agree with the Marcus Smart take, but I mean, assuming everybody's healthy, he's not the second best player on that team. It is Jaylen Brown, and backing off of that, I mean, honestly, I think it's time we start naming Jason Tatum as one of the best forwards in the NBA. Honestly.
Oh yeah, he's a superstar.
I understand the whole. I agree. He did have a rough game, and he does have games where he's not the most efficient guy. But I mean, come on, this guy dropped 50 on KD.
He was. Yeah.
Good gracious, he's 23 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, what in the world has this come to? This Celtics team, if they need one guy, they need one playmaking guard, and this team is going to go places. Because I'm telling you right now, this guy Jason Tatum is the truth.
Yep.
I mean, I think they have Jaylen Brown in this series. I think he goes 7, honestly. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about another pretty solid defender on Harden, switching off Harden, Kyrie, whatever. And you've got another guaranteed 20-30 a night. I think this series goes 7, honestly. I don't think the Celtics truly have a chance. I know it says 7 games, they don't have a chance. But, I mean, I think it goes 6 or 7 guaranteed.
And also, yeah. And I was just going to say, don't forget about Kemba Walker either, because when he gets going, this is a very tough team to stop.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem is, Kemba Walker just isn't the guy on the team. I was so excited. I was pumped. I was talking to my dad. I was like, oh, my God, I'm so excited to get this team rolling this year. I think we got a chance at the chip. And then Kemba Walker played like not Kemba Walker.
Right.
So I don't think he was the fit. I think Brad Stevens, now the new basketball manager of operations for the Boston Celtics,
right, will
make a move involving Kemba Walker. I've heard, just to put it out there, I've heard rumors of a potential move for Bradley Beal. Just they're looking at it because the Wizards, obviously, I think it's pretty clear that they might be looking to blow it up, truly, because that team isn't very young.
Yeah.
They've got a couple guys, not a super yet, it's not the Heat. So I've heard a couple of teams talking about, or a couple of guys in the Celtics organization talking about, possibly looking towards Bradley Beal. But back to the series, I think Jason Tatum and this Celtics team is one really good guard away from a championship run, honestly.
And look at what about the center position, Logan? How do you feel about that? Because Tristan Thompson's only getting older. Robert Williams has been kind of on and off he's having that toe injury, and then Taco Fall's barely played. So how confident are you in the center position for the Celtics?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think Robert Williams holds down the fort okay. He is a very
absolutely.
efficient defensive effort there. And to me, when you have two or three guys that can score the basketball the way Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and whoever the third guy is going to end up being you've got a similar build to, and I hate to say it, but it's kind of the Brooklyn Nets. Not to the same extent, but I would take Robert Williams over the Nets centers.
Yeah.
I think that he provides a lot more defensively, and he can go to work offensively, and he's efficient. And I think that the fact that he doesn't need to take 10, 15 shots a game helps.
Right.
Especially, like I said, you've got a guy like Jason Tatum who could drop 60 on any team easily.
Yeah.
So I think that, like I said, the Celtics are one piece away. And then when you want to talk about the Nets, I mean, they handled their business.
Right.
I don't think there were a whole lot of questions about this team. I don't think defensively that they were a problem at all. I think that was the one question that I truly had about this team was their defensive effort. But I mean, game one they held the Celtics under 100 points, and I think that was a masterful job defensively. So I give them a lot of credit there. And that was honestly the only question that I truly had about this team because anybody on that team can go out and get a bucket.
Yeah.
1 through 5.
Right. And
so I think that the only true question that I had was answered.
And, yeah, certainly this was a series that you could have definitely been more competitive if the Celtics were healthy. But, this is reality, and the Nets won the series in 5 games against the Celtics. Logan, I want to get before we move on to our next Eastern Conference series, I want to get your thoughts on this. You touched on it a little bit about Brad Stevens now being promoted as the GM of the Celtics, Danny Ainge stepping down. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that was a good move the Celtics made? They did this the day after they lost Game 5. They did this on Tuesday. They lost Wednesday, because they lost Game 5 this past Tuesday. How do you feel about this decision from the Celtics?
I think for the fact that Danny Ainge is leaving the team, I think that's kind of unfortunate. I think he did a very, very fantastic job for the Boston front office. I mean, you think about it, this guy got Jason Tatum he got Jaylen Brown in one draft, and then got Jason Tatum the next. I mean, I just think that this guy did a fantastic job. He scouted correctly. He got the guys that he needed. He made fantastic moves all the way around the board. He built a championship-level contender for the past decade for this team. So I just think he did a really, really good job with this Celtics team. So it's unfortunate to see him go. But I think if there's one guy that I'm all right seeing replace him, it's Brad Stevens. I think that he knows what he's doing, and I'm really, really excited to see what he decides to do with this Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart situation. Yeah,
the Celtics' future, although they lost in 5 games, does look bright. Let's head to our next series, Logan, our final Eastern Conference series, 76ers-Wizards. This was a game where I actually had the Wizards taking 2 games in this series. I had Sixers in 6. And, Sixers in 5, actually. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid defeated the Washington Wizards in 5 games. Now, Embiid got hurt in Game 4, hurt his back on a hard fall, and did not play in Game 5. But it was no big deal because Seth Curry handled his business in Game 5 with a tremendous shooting performance. He had 30 points in the game, his leading scorer for the Sixers in Game 5. Finished in 31 minutes to go along with 2 assists. So when I look at this series, Logan, I look at just the fact that the 76ers were the bigger team, they were the more experienced team, and quite frankly, they were the more skilled team. I know Washington had the better backcourt to me. When you talk about guys like Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, it doesn't get any better than that. But other than that, Logan, this Washington Wizards team just didn't look very complete to me. I think Rui Hachimura is definitely making a name for himself, and I think he has a very, very bright career ahead of him. But I think the 76ers were just more battle-tested. They're more built, honestly, for a championship run. And the Wizards, quite frankly, outside of their backcourt, aren't. That's what I saw in this series. 76ers, just the more talented team.
Yeah, I had the Sixers in 4 games. I had the Sixers in a sweep. And honestly, Game 4, I thought the Sixers were going to pull out. But I mean, the Ben Simmons situation, the whole hack of Simmons, that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my goodness, they just constantly started going after this guy. I think they Curry said before the game that he had been, before Game 4, he had been shooting 1 for 11 from the line.
That's not going to cut it.
Oh, that's not even acceptable. How do you have an NBA position shooting 1 for 11? I could shoot 1 for 11 blindfolded.
Yeah.
And this guy's doing it, consistently.
Well, this has been the problem. That's been the problem all year. That's been the problem all year and this entire career with Ben Simmons, and that's why a lot of people are concerned about the 76ers and their championship aspirations, because if Ben Simmons can't shoot, I mean, that puts a lot more pressure on Tobias Harris and Seth Curry. So, I mean, and that's kind of a problem. You need a guard that can shoot if you want to have a championship team. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm going to reference with something that Stephen A. and Doc Rivers were talking about. Doc Rivers in an interview was asked if he would ever pull Ben Simmons in late game because he can't perform. And Doc Rivers said something that, is true to a degree. He goes, I mean, if you would pull Ben Simmons late game, you're dumb. You don't have basketball.
Right.
Which is true, because Ben Simmons is Ben Simmons. You don't pull a guy like Ben Simmons from a game.
Yeah.
But then Stephen A. brought up the point, and I completely 100% agree with this, and it kind of just blew my mind, the fact that I didn't even think of it. Ben Simmons is going to cost this Philadelphia 76ers team a championship.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well.
He is going to be the reason that this team does not get a ring in the next 5 years, because he can't finish.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't shoot any. It's not like this guy can hit mid-range. He just can't shoot threes. He's not a great free throw shooter. He can't hit anything that isn't in the paint.
Yeah.
Anything that's over 6 foot away from the basket, he cannot finish.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is just unacceptable on another level. I don't care how good your defense is.
And it's not like,
is a jump shot away from LeBron James.
Exactly.
Honestly.
And it's not like we're asking him, Logan. You don't have to be like a 50, 40, 90 guy. You know what I mean? But it has to be respectable. I mean, look at LeBron. He's not a 50, 40, 90 guy.
I would take 70% from the line from Ben Simmons. If I could get 70 to 75% from the line, I would be perfectly fine. Honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly. And it's not a matter. And honestly, and this is probably the biggest problem. And Stephen A. also said this. He said, it's not a matter of the fact that he can't shoot threes. There's a lot of guys who can't shoot threes, but
right.
he takes them. You have to respect the fact that they will shoot. Ben Simmons doesn't even attempt them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absurd. And this team is not going to win a championship with Ben Simmons as their second best scorer. You said the same thing about Marcus Smart and the Celtics. They're not going to win it with him as their second best scorer.
Yeah.
It just will not happen.
Yeah.
So unless Seth Curry continues the rest of the playoffs, averaging 25 to 30, this team's out next round, if not this one, honestly.
Yeah, we'll talk about the 76ers and their playoff matchup with the Hawks in a little bit, Logan. But, as of right now, 76ers defeat Wizards in 5 games. Let's look at the Wizards side of things real quick here. Logan, do you expect Russell Westbrook to be in the nation's capital for the foreseeable future, or do you think Russell Westbrook in D.C. is just a one and done?
I don't really see why he would re-sign there. Unfortunately for Washington, it's not a big capital team. It's not a team that's going to draw a Kevin Durant, a LeBron James, a Kawhi Leonard. It's just not going to happen. I don't think Russell Westbrook has the personality nor the level of basketball play still at this point to draw that kind of talent.
Right.
I mean, we saw him draw Paul George to Oklahoma City, and we all saw how that worked out for him. Damian Lillard being the end of that. But
right.
To me, I just think that it's a one-and-done kind of thing. Maybe he signs one more year just to try it if Brad Beal wants to try one more year, but I don't see why he would. This Brooklyn Nets team isn't going anywhere, unfortunately, for everybody. I think even Brooklyn Nets fans are going to get kind of sick of it next year. It's just like the Warriors. It's just like the Warriors. It might even be worse.
But their defense is much worse than the Warriors, I can tell you that much.
That is 100% true, but I would never. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love me some Klay Thompson, but he's not James Harden. He's not James Harden.
Right.
And I don't think he's Kyrie Irving. He's lethal, but he ain't Kyrie Irving.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly he's not Kevin Durant on both teams, but it doesn't matter. But I don't see why he would re-sign there. Especially, let's be honest, the only thing keeping him from being a top 5 point guard all time is a championship.
Right.
But until he wins a championship, I can't put him top 5.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah.
And I know it's one of the things where, winning isn't everything. It kind of is. It is a lot
Absolutely.
of everything. Because if you can't win, then how do we justify greatness if you've never won?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a very talented
Yeah,
basketball player.
all-time leader in triple doubles. Yeah.
But he's never won, and I just can't justify putting him top 5 if he's never won.
Yeah, and the last time Russell Westbrook was out of the first round, Logan, was back in 2016 when he was on the Oklahoma City Thunder, when it was him, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, and they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. They blew that 3-1 series lead against Steph Curry and the Warriors, that 73-win team. Since then, Russell Westbrook, the only other time he's been out of the first round was when he was with Houston in the bubble last year, and they got bounced out in 5 games. So Russell Westbrook really hasn't had a deep playoff run since that 2016 Western Conference Finals berth with him and Kevin Durant. And it's a tricky situation in Washington right now, and it's going to be intriguing to see what they do moving forward. You were talking about Bradley Beal. He's probably their one commodity in terms of trading. So we'll see how it all works out. Well, Logan, that concludes the Eastern Conference side of things. Let's move on to the Western Conference. Let's start with our first series. I want to talk about the Jazz and the Grizzlies here to start off. This was a series when I saw the final results for Game 1, Logan, I was a little bit shocked. Memphis took a 1-0 lead in the series on the road. They won in Salt Lake City, defeated the Jazz 112-109. So my thoughts were, hey, this is a little bit shocking here. Memphis, having just beat the Warriors in that play-in game, now go to Salt Lake City, take care of business again against the Jazz. This might not be a 5-game series. I was thinking, maybe Ja Morant and company, when they go home with this series tied 1-1, they could possibly get a game on their home floor. But then Donovan Mitchell happened, and Donovan Mitchell returned and put all Grizzlies fans back to reality. This was a series, to me, once Donovan Mitchell returned, Logan, it was pretty much over. The Grizzlies did compete, so you have to give them a lot of credit. They only lost by 12 in Game 2. When you look at Game 3, Logan, they only lost by 10. And then in Game 4, they lost by only 7, and they did get blown out in Game 5, 110-126. But this was a Grizzlies team who competed for the majority of this series, Logan. But once Donovan Mitchell returned, it was pretty much lights out for me. Because I've been talking about this Jazz team all year. They're just too complete of a team. They're too skilled. They're a phenomenal shooting team. And that's what the Grizzlies were dealing with here. And they had no shot.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't give up John Morant a lot of credit. When the draft happened, I was talking to a couple buddies of mine, and we were talking, okay, well, who's going to be what? Both of them had Zion being really, really good for a couple years and getting hurt. I somewhat agreed, but neither of them thought John Morant was going to be that guy. And I gave him a lot of credit. I was like, John Morant is going to be a star in the league. He is so talented.
Yes.
And he performed. He did. But similarly to Russell Westbrook, even with the young team that the Grizzlies were, I expected a little bit more out of him, winning-wise. A lot of people are, the Jazz suck. The Grizzlies suck. They don't have anybody. They got Jaren Jackson, who is a decent player, decent enough to play. They've got Jonas Valanciunas, who is a very quality starting veteran center.
Dylan Brooks.
They've got Dylan Brooks from Oregon, who is a superstar in college and continues to be quite good in the NBA. So this team had the pieces. They just didn't win. But John Morant's performance in Game 1, it was a completely different series after that.
Yeah.
I was scared. I was scared for that Jazz team. I was like, dude, John Morant's coming. He's on his way.
Right.
So I think that it was definitely a very good series individually for John Morant. I got to give him a lot of credit where it's due. Donovan Mitchell came back after Game 1 and took care of business. Everybody knows that especially in the NBA more than anything. In the NFL, you could get away with losing your best wide receiver, your best running back.
Mm-hmm.
You could get away with that. Mm-hmm. There's other things you can. In the NBA, you cannot miss your best player and still win a championship. It just won't happen.
Yeah.
So the Jazz getting Donovan Mitchell back was crucial to their chances of winning that series. I don't think without Donovan Mitchell they win that series, honestly.
Yeah, the
way John Morant was playing, I just don't see it happening. I think that John Morant, for what he could, took care of business, but Donovan Mitchell was the victor at the end of that series, so I got to give a lot of credit where it's due.
Yeah, this Jazz team was just a team with more experience, and at the end of the day, I think experience is probably the biggest factor in a playoff series. So Jazz defeat the Memphis Grizzlies in 5 games. Memphis did take game 1, but then Donovan Mitchell returned from his injury in game 2, and the Jazz won the remaining games. Win this series 4-1. They will now play the winner of the Clippers-Mavericks series. We'll get to that in a little bit, Logan. Let's talk about another playoff series. Let's talk about the Nuggets and the Trailblazers, Logan. This was a series where I had the Trailblazers in 6 games because I just believe that Damian Lillard was the MVP of the league this season. Just how he basically has carried this Portland franchise. And this is a Denver team without Jamal Murray, so I thought, and without Will Barton as well, 2 of of their best scorers. And I definitely saw a crack that could have been a crack for the Trailblazers to go through and maybe defeat the Denver Nuggets. And I was wrong. But this was a competitive series for the most part. Denver won this series in 6 games. It did take them 6 games. This was another series, Logan, where I thought that, like that Hawks-Knicks series, it's going more than 5 games. That's what I thought when I saw this playoff matchup. And it did go more than 5 games, but I was a little bit disappointed, honestly, with how much of the load Damian Lillard had to endure. Especially in Game 5, that 55-point performance from Damian Lillard, Logan, that was just absolutely unbelievable. 55 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, all in 52 minutes from Damian Lillard. But then guess what? CJ McCollum, 18 points in 51 minutes. Yusuf Nurkic, probably the most disappointing player on this Trailblazers team, 13 points in 24 minutes. Robert Covington, I know 19 points in 44 minutes, that's not horrible, but that's got to be better for a veteran like Robert Covington. Norman Powell, who was a big trade acquisition, 51 minutes and 13 points in Game 5. This Game 5 really, to me, is what summed up the Trailblazers season. It's Damian Lillard, please take us to the promised land. Now, Carmelo Anthony, it's been great to see him revive his career in Portland. He really has been special, but he's clear, he's getting older. He's not going to be that franchise player anymore. CJ McCollum, he's a great scorer, but he has to be on that same level as Lillard, and I just don't think he is. Lillard has basically had to carry this team. He carried them in this series, and Denver, to me, was the more complete team. Despite losing Jamal Murray, you got this guy, Facundo Campazzo, stepping up. Jokic was handling his business. Aaron Gordon, who's hit some clutch shots in this series. He's turned out to be a huge piece on this Nuggets roster. I mean, you just look down the roster, Logan. The Nuggets, to me, and this was without Jamal Murray and Will Barton too, they are making a case as to being the deepest team in the NBA. And that was basically what I got out of this in terms of this series. The magic word for me was depth. And the Nuggets had more of it. The Trailblazers' depth was Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, to be quite honest with you. And that's what I got out of this series, Logan. But I want to hear your thoughts on the Nuggets defeating the Trailblazers in 6 games.
So, I remember, I'm not sure if you do, but 2 weeks ago when we had a podcast, we were talking about all the series, and I told you, mark my words, if CJ McCollum does not average about 25 points a game, this Trailblazers team will go down in flames. And I said he's never performed in the postseason, despite how well this team has played in the regular season. He has never truly performed to a way that CJ McCollum should be performing. And he didn't. Once again, he wasn't the guy that he was supposed to be. So to me, it's more about the fact that CJ McCollum is just a regular season player. He is. Just like Giannis has been for the past 5 years. He's been amazing in the regular season and just couldn't do it in postseason. That's CJ McCollum now. He just couldn't do it. Damian Lillard is one of the most... He is about as close to Stephen Curry as anybody will ever be for the next 10 years, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He is unbelievable, because you talked about the numbers that he put up a couple nights ago, but what you failed to mention was the fact that he dropped 2 buzzer beaters to send it to double OT.
Yeah, he's clutch.
Absolutely superstardom for Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just more of the fact that he has no help in Portland. Terry Stotts is done. He's going to go out to Indiana. But I think Portland they need to figure it out because they got to retool that team around Damian Lillard. Because he's not much longer for this league or for that team if they don't figure it out.
Yeah, and to me also, Logan, you just mentioned Terry Stotts, who is gone, and the possible rumors of him going to the Indiana Pacers. But to me also, Logan, you've got to look at Jusuf Nurkic too. He underperformed significantly, not just in this series, but throughout this season too. This is a guy who I think can be a great center and cause a lot of problems. And Nikola Jokic was just giving him the business, and Jusuf Nurkic really never responded to that. So that's another aspect of the Trailblazers that is very disappointing with me. So what are your thoughts on Nurkic, Logan?
I definitely agree. I think Nurkic should have played better in the series as a whole. He hasn't been that guy all season long. He's so injury prone that it's really hard to truly rely on that guy. But the problem that I have with CJ McCollum instead of as much Nurkic, nobody's talking about Nurkic getting a near max deal. Nobody. I mean, he's worth a good $10-15 million a year, but he's not even close to a max deal.
No.
Everybody, CJ McCollum's looking for a max deal. And he just isn't worth it. I don't think he performs, and when it matters most, when it's on the line, he doesn't do his job. Nurkic, he hasn't ever been that guy. Nobody's ever been talking about him making his money, and I'm all about the guys, getting their money if it's deserved, but he just hasn't deserved it.
I want to talk, but here's my thought. I completely agree with you about Nurkic, Logan, but you look at CJ McCollum, and you were talking about he hasn't been that guy in the playoffs. And I look at that interestingly because, he hasn't, I'm not going to say that his stat lines, he hasn't been that guy, but the Trailblazers have relied on Damian Lillard. When you look at in those moments of taking us to the promised land and stepping up in the big moments, the ball has been in Damian Lillard's hands. So when I look at it, I think CJ McCollum has the ability to do it. The problem is, would you rather have Damian Lillard in a clutch situation, or would you rather have CJ McCollum in a clutch situation? And everyone's going to pick Damian Lillard. So really, to me, possibly, it's just CJ McCollum has really never had that chance because he's always been in Damian Lillard's shadow when it comes to performing under the bright lights and in clutch time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, for big moments wise, of course you're going to pick Damian Lillard. You're going to pick LeBron. Obviously, everybody would pick LeBron over AD, but you can make the argument that AD is a better bucket than LeBron is.
Yeah,
you could. But the problem that I have isn't the big moment. And if that's what I said, I'm sorry for my misspeech. But
no worries.
It's more of the fact that you mentioned earlier. He's playing over 30 minutes a game and he gets 18 points.
Yeah,
that is more it to me because there's plenty of moments where you can shoot the basketball. And if you have cold feet and you can't shoot, you don't deserve a max contract. It's that simple. If you don't perform throughout a game, not as much the big moments, because if you don't get shots in big moments at the end of the game, then that's fine. Because you got a guy like Damian Lillard. I've already, talked about how amazing Damian Lillard is, but it's just more the fact that he doesn't perform over a 45-minute stretch. He just doesn't get it done throughout the course of a game. Big moments, call it what you want. You don't get the shots, that's fine. But when you're not even getting 20 points in a game, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, and to me, Logan, I definitely see. A lot of people are wondering, can this backcourt of Lillard and McCollum ever win a championship? And they the only time they went out of the first round in these last few years, Logan, was 2019 when they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. Again, got swept by the Warriors, who were without KD at the time because he was injured. So a lot of question marks surrounding this Blazers organization. Do you think that Damian Lillard might want to find his way out of Portland? Because we know that he's extremely committed to that city and that franchise, but do you think it might be time for him to consider leaving this Portland, Oregon?
Emotionally, I don't know about that. As you said, he's talked many times on podcasts and different interviews that he doesn't want to leave his home in Portland and doesn't want to leave Portland, Oregon. He wants to continue to play for the Blazers, but I will tell you this much. The Portland Trail Blazers will never win a championship with Damian Lillard without any help.
No way.
With CJ McCollum as their best player. They will never win a championship with CJ McCollum as their best player, or their second best player. It won't happen. Because until this guy shows me that he can play, I can't. I cannot give him that kind of credit and tell you that they've got a chance, because they don't. It just will not happen. Because let's even assume they do make the finals. You think they're telling me that they're going to be one of those Eastern Conference superpowers? It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't see this team doing anything with CJ McCollum as their second best player. It just will not happen. So from a championship winning standpoint, I think it was time to go 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But when it comes to emotional, I understand. I would stay if he's that emotionally attached to this organization. But if not, then it's time to go.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Damian Lillard still has some more years on his contract with Portland, so this is going to be an interesting scenario. But in terms of this year, Denver Nuggets defeat the Portland Trailblazers in 6 games in this first round matchup, 4 games to 2. Denver defeats Portland. They will play the Phoenix Suns in the second round. And speaking of the Phoenix Suns, Logan, this was definitely not what I was expecting. Phoenix Suns defeat the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James and Anthony Davis are out. They are no more in these NBA playoffs. And I gotta tell you, Logan, these Suns are for real. They are not messing around at all. Chris Paul got hurt in Game 1 of this series between the Lakers and the Suns, hurt that shoulder. But then Game 4, we go over to Game 4, he looked better. He looked like Chris Paul again. And that's when the Suns won 3 games in a row. The Lakers did tie this series up in Game 2 at 1 game apiece, and even took the lead in Game number 3 by defeating the Suns 109-95. But then in Game 4, Anthony Davis hurt his groin. He was out for Game 5 with the series tied at 2 games apiece. That was probably the most surprising result of the series. The Suns destroy the Lakers in Game 5, 115-85. And then in Game 6, this game was over to me, Logan, after the first quarter. I mean, what was the score? 36-14 in Game 6. The Suns were destroying the Lakers at the Staples Center in LA. This was a very surprising result for me, Logan. And I'll be honest with you, if the Lakers were healthy, I would have taken them to win this series. I took them to win this series in 7 games. Logan, I think you had the Lakers in 5, if I'm not mistaken. And
I had them in close games.
Yeah, and when the injuries just were too much for the Lakers to overcome. But then when you look past the injuries, and Stephen A. Smith on ESPN First Take brought up some points. You look at Dennis Schroeder, who wasn't. I thought he would be the 3rd best player on this team. He threw a goose egg in Game 5, 0 points, and then you go. It's just like he wasn't that guy all season long to me. And then you lose your big men in JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Marc Gasol, I think, is a better offensive player, but defensively, there are a lot of holes there, Logan. You don't retain Rajon Rondo. Avery Bradley is gone. Kuzma is just not that guy yet. They do have a piece in Talen Horton-Tucker, but my biggest problem, Logan, was Montrezl Harrell. This guy was the 6th man of the year last year, and he's barely playing like 5 minutes a game. I don't know what the process or the thought process was with Montrezl Harrell not getting time. I know Andre Drummond was there, former Cav, who's now with the Lakers, and he was a big body that the Lakers needed in the paint. I'm not saying that Drummond shouldn't have played, but Montrezl Harrell, why is this guy averaging like 5-6 minutes a game, Logan? That's just inexcusable for me. This is the 6th man of the year. He's an energy bunny. He's gonna bring that defensive spirit. He can get buckets too. Like, he's strong and he's physical down there in the paint, and that's what the Lakers needed in this series. And Montrezl Harrell, I see him sitting on the bench chewing gum. That was just inexcusable for me. So yes, the injuries did play a big part, but also there were some little factors like Montrezl Harrell and the defense that also contributed to the Lakers getting bounced out in the first round. So what are your thoughts on this series, Logan? Because there's so much to break down.
Honestly, Skip Bayless said something about, this is your king, right? And I understand Skip Bayless is a LeBron hater, but there's some truth to what he has to say. This Suns team is real. You mentioned it already. I wasn't sure if I believed that yet. I do. This team is real.
Yeah.
Devin Booker is a superstar. Chris Paul is elite still at his 36 years of age.
Right.
DeAndre Ayton had a fantastic series. I mean, you're talking about him playing against one of the best players that this Lakers group has to offer, or even in the NBA, and he just went to work. So, I mean, the credit all here has to go to the Suns, but LeBron James didn't even put up a fight in Game 6.
No.
He just got abused. Absolutely torn apart, that entire team. I honestly, I'm at a loss of words right now because I don't even know what to say. Like, what is there to say? Because the problem is, Anthony Davis was hurt. I understand that. But at the same time, Anthony Davis wasn't 100% throughout that series, period.
Yeah.
He just wasn't. But the fact that they decided not to play him in Game 5, I understand trying to keep him healthy, but he got hurt in Game 6 anyway. So
Yeah.
the fact that they chose not to play him in Game 5, easily the most crucial game in the series, in my opinion. Because if the Lakers win that game, I think they go on to I think they force Game 7. Excuse me, it goes on to Game 7 at the worst.
Right,
You know,
right.
then you could say force 7 games, and you have a fighter's chance if LeBron finds a way to drop 50.
But do you think to me, Logan, that even if Anthony Davis did play in Game 5, how could the Lakers have won? Because they got blown out by 30. So even with Anthony Davis playing, I still think the Lakers would have lost Game 5. To be quite honest with you.
Well, yeah, I know. It's just, honestly, part of it could be mental, too.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you're a 7-foot, guy who is young, under 25, and you have to line up against Anthony Davis. You know the lights are on you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Oh, it's your job to perform. When you don't have that kind of pressure, it's a completely different mindset.
Right.
So I think everything would have just played out differently had Anthony Davis played that game. Now, I'm going to say this much. I think this was easily the biggest upset we've seen in the playoffs in a long time. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, and I think a lot of people just find it kind of hard to believe. I don't think a lot of people have even, honestly conceived the idea that LeBron James won't be in the NBA Finals this year.
Yeah.
We will not see LeBron James in the second round. I just find that kind of hard to believe.
Right.
But like I said, I'm just at a loss of words. I just think it could have been handled a lot better. And as for the Montrezl Harrell situation, I just think it was kind of dumb that they didn't play him.
Right.
I don't understand
Yeah.
why bother signing him.
Yeah.
Why waste money?
And I thought that was a big acquisition, too. Like, at the beginning of the season, when I heard that the Lakers were signing Montrezl Harrell, I mean, I was like, wow, that's a big upgrade for the defending NBA champions. I'm expecting some great things from Montrezl Harrell as a Laker. And we're here, it's June 5th, and Montrezl Harrell, we just finished watching him in a playoff series where he barely played, 5 minutes a game. So, I don't know.
And I'd like to mention, I'm not sure if you remember, but at the beginning of the season, I told you, when that next team was assembled with James Harden, I told you, I said, if the Lakers and LeBron James win the championship and beat the Brooklyn Nets, or any team in that Eastern Conference that beat the Nets, there will be a conversation with who is the greatest of all time. Because if LeBron James can take out a team like that, there's always a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But instead, he gets knocked out in the first round.
Yeah.
In 6 games. Wow, he couldn't even force 7. I'm sorry, that is just unbelievable to me. Kendrick Perkins, wow. I'm not sure if you heard about the bet that he was making with Stephen A.
No, I heard of him, yeah. Yeah.
So, I just don't even know what to say about this Lakers team. I'm just so disappointed in them right now.
And we're looking at the Lakers' future here, Logan, before we move on to our next series. I'm looking at this Lakers' future, and I'm looking at LeBron's impact on the team thus far. So LeBron's been with the Lakers for 3 years now. First year, didn't even make the playoffs, suffered that groin injury, if you remember. Next year, they get Anthony Davis, win the championship. One of the most emotional years in Lakers history with the passing of Kobe Bryant as well. They take care of business in the bubble, winning the championship against the Miami Heat. And then this year, they get bounced out in the first round against Phoenix. So if you look at that, you take that championship year aside, Logan. Then you have the year they don't make the playoffs, which is LeBron's first year, and then this most recent year where they get bounced in the first round. In your eyes, do you think LeBron's tenure in Los Angeles with the Lakers has been disappointing thus far? Because he only has one championship. I know one championship's in 3 years, nothing to sniff at. but they didn't make the playoffs his first year, and now they get bounced out in the first round his third year. So if you take away that second year, which is the championship year, what's there to look at? So that's my thoughts to you. Do you think that LeBron's year time in LA has been disappointing?
No. I mean, I do understand where you're coming from with the whole, if you take this year out, it doesn't look all that good. But at the same time, you can't take a year out. You still do have to consider the fact that he did win a championship. And even though it's only one, that first year that he didn't make the playoffs, who was on that team?
Right.
There was no Anthony Davis. We all know Lonzo Ball was basically shooting Ben Simmons' numbers.
Yeah.
Brandon Ingram was not Brandon Ingram. I mean, I know we all remember the Pacers, chant when Ingram was at the line of LeBron's going to trick you. And he did. But I just think, if you're going to take out a year, it has to be the first year. Because there was nobody on that team. It was LeBron, and I think the second best player was probably Caruso, honestly. It was like that.
Was Caruso even on the team?
I don't even know. That's what I'm saying. We don't even know who was on the team.
Yeah.
Because they were just that irrelevant. Not to mention, I'm not sure if you remember, LeBron had a groin injury the entire last 3 months of the season.
Yeah, that's what I brought up, yeah.
So, if you were going to have to take out a season of that 3-year tenure, to me, it's got to be the first one. Even though the COVID year, they still had to play the Denver Nuggets, who took out the Clippers.
Yeah.
So, to me, I think I got to give LeBron credit for winning a championship. But let me tell you, all the credit just completely diminished down to nothing after that first round bounce by the Suns. I think it was a fantastic series. I loved watching. I think I actually watched all 6 of those games.
Yeah.
But I give a lot of credit to Devin Booker. He just absolutely worked.
Yeah.
And he finally, and I told my dad, I said, you know what? It is a sin that this man had to play on that team for all those years.
Yeah. And
I am sorry. That is unacceptable for that Suns team. But they got this guy, the people that he needs. And this Suns team is a true threat to this NBA championship this year. I will say that much right now. Mark my words. If Devin Booker and Chris Paul continue to step up, this team is going to make a trip to the finals this year.
Yeah, and that is a pretty bold prediction, Logan. We'll see what happens. The Suns are going to definitely be battle tested in this next round. They're going to be facing off against the Denver Nuggets. But let's talk about our final first round matchup in the NBA in the Western Conference, Logan. This is the only first round matchup that is still going on. All the other ones have concluded. We're talking about Clippers versus Mavericks. And this is a series, Logan, where the Clippers have been the same old Clippers to me. That's what it comes down to me. This is the first time in NBA history where the road team has won the first 6 games in a playoff series. That is unbelievable. When I looked at the Dallas Mavericks, when they took a 2-0 lead in after Game 2, and they basically destroyed any hopes of the Clippers getting home court back, I was thinking to myself, what were the Clippers doing resting Kawhi and Paul George those last 2 games of the season? Because if they got that 3rd seed, they could have had Portland, which would have been a much easier matchup for them. But instead, they have Dallas with Luka Doncic. You've got guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Jalen Brunson. Boban Marjanovic has been playing well in this series. You accumulate all of that, and it's just a tougher match. Dallas, to me, is a tougher outing than Portland. I know we were talking about how great Damian Lillard was, but Dallas, to me, is a more complete team than Portland. So the Clippers had their problems. In Game 3, they were down big in the first quarter. In Dallas, I thought they were going to get swept, heading and lose Game 3 and then eventually get swept. But they come back and they actually pull it off, Logan. They tied this series at 2 games apiece, heading back home to Game 5 at Staples Center. And a lot of people were wondering, once the Clippers tied that series, Logan, I thought as well that the Clippers were going to win this series in 6. After taking those 2 in Dallas, I thought the Clippers had taken any hope the Mavericks had of winning this series, especially going back on their home floor for Game 5 at the Staples Center. But how wrong was I? Mavericks defeat the Clippers in Game 5, a huge road win, 105-100, Logan. And I thought, you know what, same old Clippers, here we go. Game 6, I thought the Mavericks were going to win it, to be quite honest with you. I just thought the Clippers, it was a doomed situation. But guess what? I saw Kawhi Leonard last night in Game 6 with the money on the line, Logan, that may have been the best performance I've ever seen Kawhi Leonard put forth. I mean, his ability, he locked down Luka for the most part. And then what I saw on the offensive end from Kawhi was incredible. His in throughout this series, especially the games in Dallas, he's been terrific. He's had games where he's put up 41 points. Look, he put up 41 points in Game 2, if I'm not mistaken. He's been doing his business. He was sensational last night. And as I said, that may have been the best performance I've ever seen Kawhi Leonard play. And then guess what? You have Paul George. The playoff P, as for this year, these playoffs for the most part, Logan, the playoff P talk, I think, has should be diminished a little bit because Paul George has been doing his business in these playoffs. 20 points in 46 minutes. Reggie Jackson was the second leading scorer last night for the Clippers. 25 points in 38 minutes. And the Clippers get a huge win on the road against the Mavericks to tie up this series 104-97. So Game 7 will be tomorrow afternoon, Sunday afternoon, from Staples Center in Los Angeles. If the Clippers are the same old Clippers, they're going to lose tomorrow. But they could also turn the tide and be the first home team to win this series, to win a game in this series. So the winner of this series, Logan, will face the Utah Jazz in round 1. Utah's going to have home court no matter who wins tomorrow because they were the first seed in the Western Conference. So, Logan, this is a series where I'm just baffled right now. I still can't believe what's been going on with this series. So what are your thoughts on this Clippers-Mavericks series, and who do you think is going to win Game 7 in L.A.?
Well, you talked about, I'll start off with the playoff P comment, because that's the one that's kind of sticking with me right now. I mean, playoff P. It's definitely not as awful as it was last year, I'll say that much. But it still hasn't been Paul George, in my opinion. Paul George, before playoff P last season, was quite a good playoff performer. He had done his business. He was up around, I believe, almost 30 points a game in a lot of playoff series. He had done a really good job out in Indiana. He had brought them to an Eastern Conference Finals, I believe, in 2012, was it? 2013, maybe? And he was doing his work.
Yeah, 2013, 2014. Yeah.
2014, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's played better. Like I said, he played better. I cannot deny that. But he still hasn't been Paul George. And I think that's a huge reason why the Clippers have struggled mightily in this series. I will have to give credit to Kawhi Leonard. He has been perfect. He has been about as close to perfect as you can be. Kawhi Leonard has done his work. He hasn't played like he did against the Nuggets in the last 4 games of the series. He did his job. But can I just say, what scares me is that Luka Doncic, at 22 years old, is the best player on the court.
Yeah. They can't guard him. They can't guard him.
He is the best player on the court. I don't care how many points Kawhi drops. Kawhi could drop 60. Luka's still better. Luka will find a way to be better than Kawhi Leonard.
I don't think Luka's better than Kawhi Leonard, though. I think that's taken a little too far.
Oh, no, what I mean is performance-wise.
In this series, performance-wise, yeah.
He's played better. But let me tell you, next preseason, depending on how the rest of this postseason plays out, there might be some conversations where Luka Doncic is getting to that level. There might be. Because I'm telling you right now, this kid is a bucket.
Yeah.
He is unreal. I was talking about Jason Tatum. I'll tell you this much. Damian Lillard is amazing. He really is. But I'm to the point right now, and it might just be me, I'm to the point right now where I might just want Luka Doncic over Damian Lillard.
Nah, yeah. You might be a solo act on that one, Logan.
I am really close. I'm telling you, this kid, I'm not going to lie. I know it sounds crazy. This kid is real. He is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know. He is just unbelievable. I got to give him credit. The Mavericks have had guys step up. Kristaps Porzingis has played quite bad this postseason. He hasn't been very good.
Oh, yeah, he's been horrible. Yeah.
He's been awful. Boban Marjanovic is basically the second best performer. Let's be honest. Really.
Well, Tim Hardaway Jr.
Tim Hardaway Jr.?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
He's beating the Clippers.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad Kawhi's playing. I don't care how bad PG's playing. They've got guys. Reggie Jackson had 14 points in the first quarter yesterday.
Yeah.
But the Mavericks team was nerves damage in Game 3. He couldn't lift his neck, and he still dropped 42.
Yeah.
I don't even, I'm sorry, this kid is mind-boggling. I'm going to go Mavs in Game 7. I don't know how this kid's going to lose. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, and, like I said, that Kawhi performance yesterday was really what stuck in my mind for the most part. He was getting to his spot, doing whatever he wanted. His handles, too, Logan, are looking a lot better. He's really been more complete on the offensive end. But, again, defense is really what's going to be what dictates Game 7, and that'll be tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time from the Staples Center. Logan, you've got the Mavericks, and guess what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go with the Clippers tomorrow in Game 7. I think that they are going to figure out a way to defeat this Dallas team. We're going to see if this Clippers team truly has the mental toughness that they all advertise that they have. Marcus Morris, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, do they have the mental toughness to get out of this series and head to Salt Lake City to face the Jazz? I believe that they do, and I think that they're going to win Game 7 tomorrow and defeat the Dallas Mavericks. Well, Logan, that concludes Round 1 of NBA playoff talk, and we're going to look at Round 2 a little bit here. We already have 3 matchups out of the 4 that are ready to go for the second round. Let's start with Bucks-Nets. Game 1 of that series is today at 7:30 p.m. So we talk about this. You were talking about Giannis, Logan, and how great he's been in this postseason thus far. The Nets took care of their business against the Celtics. This is really going to be a very interesting series because the Bucks' defense is something that really has been a problem for teams. And then their shooting, this is the best I've ever seen the Milwaukee Bucks be able to shoot the basketball. And then you add the talents of Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is going to be a tough Bucks team to deal with the addition of Drew Holiday to create that big three with Giannis, Middleton, and now Drew Holiday. But the Nets and their offensive firepower, and especially the fact that they have home court in this series, that's definitely going to be an interesting factor as well. So, Logan, what are your thoughts on this series, and who are you going to take? I'm going to take Nets in 7 games. I think this Milwaukee Big Three to me is for real, but I think the Nets offense is going to overpower the Bucks. So, what are your thoughts on this series, Logan, and who do you think is going to win?
So I definitely agree with you that it is going to be a really, really good Bucks team. It's going to be really tough to deal with. And I'm going to go similar. I'm going to make a statement similarly to what I did in the Lakers-Suns series. And aside from Game 5 and 6, the games were all close. All of them were within like 15 points.
Yeah.
So they were all close games. I'm going to say this. I'm going to take Nets in 6.
Okay.
And I think the games are going to be battles. And here's the reason that I won't give them 7. All right? The issue that I have with this Bucks team, they've got one really, really good late-time finisher. Think about it. Chris Middleton can finish late games.
Yeah.
Nobody else has that ability. Drew Holiday is inconsistent offensively. He's a lethal effort defensively. He's amazing defensively. But he's not that guy offensively. No one's going to ask him to hold the ball at the end of the game. Giannis doesn't really have a jump shot. But it's not that bothers me. It's not the fact that he can't shoot threes. It's the fact that he can't shoot free throws. Game 1 in Miami, I will refer to. If anybody who watched the final 5 minutes of that game, Giannis was abysmal from the line. Awful.
Yeah.
He couldn't shoot the free throw to save his life. And to me, that is going to be the deciding factor in this series of whether it goes 6-7, whether the Bucks even have a chance to win this series. I don't think the Bucks are the second best team in the East. I'm going to go with the 76ers. I mean, even though Ben Simmons struggles, I'm still going to go with the Sixers because their best player can shoot. And so on the beat. He can shoot.
Yeah, but he's injury prone.
He is. Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
And I had them go championship. So, I will say this much. The Bucks are going to be a tough team. There's no doubt about it. But Giannis' inability to shoot from the line is going to derail this team, similarly to Ben Simmons. I'm not saying the Sixers are going to go win a championship. I'm not.
Yeah.
But comparably speaking, I would much rather take the Sixers than the Bucks because of the simple fact. Chris Middleton is comparable in most instances to Tobias Harris. Very comparable. And I would take Ben Simmons over Drew Holiday. Easily.
Okay.
Even though he can't shoot.
Yeah.
So in my eyes, now that we're comparing, in my eyes, this series isn't going to go 7 as a result of Giannis Antetokounmpo's inability to shoot the basketball. But I still think it's going to be a good series. I think it's going to be a battle every single game. But at the end of the day, if you don't have more than one guy that can finish, you're going to struggle in late game performances.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting series, Logan, but we both have the Nets. I'm very excited. This is going to be a much tougher opponent, obviously, for the Nets than the Celtics were. And Game 1 of this series begins today. Nets will have home court. They'll have home court advantage in this series. And let's look at another series, Logan, the other side of this Eastern Conference second round bracket. Hawks and 76ers. We were talking about the Atlanta Hawks for a little bit. We were talking about Ben Simmons and Trae Young. This is going to be a very fun series to watch, Logan, I think, especially if Joel Embiid is healthy. And I'm really excited to watch the 76ers and how they will withhold the firepower of Trae Young. In my eyes, I have the 76ers winning this series in 6 games. I definitely believe that Trae Young is on the come-up, but when I look at the 76ers, I just think it's a more well-balanced, experienced roster. Atlanta's definitely right there in terms of a well-balanced roster, especially when you look at guys like Lou Williams coming off the bench. But I just think that Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, who's going to stop Ben Simmons to me on the Hawks? I mean, John Collins maybe, but who really can stop him from getting to the basket with his strength? And then I think Ben Simmons can lock down Trae Young if he so pleases. He obviously has the height advantage, and he's got the footwork and the speed to do it. So if anyone can stop Trae Young on the Sixers, it's definitely Ben Simmons. And I think the 76ers defense is not something to mess around with. So I'll definitely give the Hawks 2 games in this series just because I think that they're very high-powered, very well-balanced offense. But I just think the 76ers will prevail and get to the Eastern Conference Finals in 6 games. Your thoughts on this series, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, I agree for the most part, but I'm going to take the 76ers in 5. I think that I agree with every single word that you just said about the Hawks. Every single one of it. But I think that you got to give Ben Simmons a little bit more credit on Trae Young. I am going to give myself a safety net right here, right now. I didn't do that with the Lakers series, and it kind of burned me. If everybody stays healthy, it's 5 games. If Embiid goes down and misses a game, it'll go 6.
Yeah.
If Embiid is 100% good to go every game, it's fine. I don't see a doubt. Lakers, I didn't expect Anthony Davis to go down. If I know he goes down, I'll take the Suns in 7. But the problem is, if Joel Embiid is not 100%, this team doesn't have a number 1 scorer. Tobias Harris is good, but he's not a number 1 scorer. So to me, if everybody stays healthy on that 76ers team, it goes 5 games because I don't think Trae Young is going to get more than 25 points a game if Ben Simmons is guarding him 48 every single minute.
Yeah.
Honestly. But this is just that good. His lateral quickness is unmatched. He's 6'10".
Yeah.
He's 6'10", and he runs like a guard.
Right.
Like, I don't even know. Like, how do you get past him?
There's no way.
You don't get past him. So to me, if Ben Simmons stays on Trae Young, and that's the matchup that Doc Rivers goes with, this series is over in 5 games. I'll give Trae Young one really good game where he just gets sick of Ben Simmons and just drops like 40. But besides that, I don't know if I can. We talked about the Hawks, and I gave them a lot of credit, but I didn't say that they had scorers. They have a lot of young guys who are dogs.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of young guys who can run. They love defense. They're a talented defensive team. They don't have scorers. They have Trae Young. John Collins is a good 15 points a game. That's about it. They don't have anybody else, really.
Well, they've got Bogdanovich. They've got guys like Bogdanovich and Herter. I'd give them. I mean, they can shoot the ball.
Yeah, they can shoot, but at the same time, shooting is not the most efficient way to score. And unless you shoot like Steph Curry efficiency, not efficiency, but you know what I mean.
Right.
I would look at these guys as 20 points a game.
Yeah,
and to me, that's what you need to beat this Sixers team.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the end of the day, it could go 6 if Embiid is not 100%, but assuming everybody is 100, I go 5 games for the Sixers.
Yeah, and we both have Sixers winning this series, Logan, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be an intriguing series. I definitely think the Hawks can win some games in this series if Trae Young finds a way to get past Ben Simmons on the defensive end, but that is certainly a challenge in itself when you have Ben Simmons being considered for Defensive Player of the Year. Let's look at our final matchup in these NBA playoffs thus far, because we don't know who the Jazz will be playing, because they'll be playing either the Clippers or the Mavericks. Let's look at this Nuggets-Suns series in the Western Conference. This, to me, I think, Logan, you could say is a battle of two of the deepest teams in the NBA. When you look at what the Denver Nuggets have coming off the bench, they've got guys like JaMychal Green coming off the bench. If Will Barton was healthy, he would come off the bench. You've got guys like Facundo Campazzo. Jokic is doing his thing as well. Aaron Gordon, I was talking about him as well. You look at the Phoenix Suns as well. They have a deep roster as well. It's not just Booker and Chris Paul. You've got guys like DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges. I'm trying to think of some other names. Cam Johnson. Cameron Payne has been lighting it up. We didn't even mention Cameron Payne against the Lakers. He was terrific in that series, so he's going to play great in this upcoming series against Denver as well. And I'm very excited to watch this Nuggets Suns game because I just think these are two of the deepest teams in the league. I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to say Suns in 7, Logan. This is just a series to me where both teams are going to match each other offensively. To me, defensively is where this series will be decided. So I've got Suns in 7. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to flip that. I'm going to go Nuggets in 7.
Okay.
And my reasoning, I think it could go either way. We all know Game 7. To me, Game 7 is when the best players got to perform. If you don't perform in Game 7, you might as well not show up.
Right.
So, to me, the reason I got Nuggets in 7 is this particular reason. I think it's worth mentioning. We didn't talk about this when we were talking about the Blazers and the Nuggets. I forgot to mention it, but Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
Wow. He had 26 at halftime.
Yeah, he was amazing.
He has been lighting up the numbers on the box score. He has been amazing in the absence of Jamal Murray, and I called it out. I said, you know what? I still like this team because of Michael Porter Jr. I think this guy will step up. His numbers have been amazing. I think he's going to be very, very good when it matters. Mm-hmm. And he has been. So I think, as of right now, don't get me wrong, the Suns are a team to look out for. I already said that they were a championship contender in that Western Conference. But the problem is, Chris Paul, I talked about him still being very good.
Yeah.
He's not a finisher. He's not a closer. That's just not what he does. He's never been a closer. Never.
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton, he's a talent. But now when you're going up against a 7'2" MVP in Nikola Jokic, nobody can be expected to be 100%.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. He did really, really well against Anthony Davis. But Anthony Davis was like 50%. That was not Anthony Davis.
Right.
You're going up against a guy who's coming off averaging almost 30 a game.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that pans out. Devin Booker, I don't have any answer. I think it's going to be a head-to-head matchup between him and Michael Porter Jr., who is worth mentioning, a very, very good defender. So I'm really excited to see what happens. But I'm going to go Nuggets in 7. It's going to be a dogfight. I think Game 1 is going to be, I'll call it out now, I think it's going to be within 10 points. I don't see a blowout going out in Game 1, but I think the rest of it's going to be any way you want it. It's no less than 6 games, unless Book drops 60 a game.
Yeah.
Unless it's going to go 6 or 7 for sure.
And yeah, Logan, this is going to be a very tight series to me. Nuggets-Suns Game 1 will be this upcoming Monday at 10 p.m. Phoenix has home court in this series, so they will host the first 2 games, and if there is a possible Game 7, which Logan and I both think will happen, it would be in Phoenix. That wouldn't be till the end of June. June 20th is when that possible Game 7 would be. So, Logan, that concludes all of our NBA news. That took up the majority of the show. Let's get into some Indians talk here real quick. We're going to keep it locked in on Cleveland Sports. We're going to get into WNBA news next week, talk about the standings and everything associated with the WNBA next week. But for now, we're going to focus on two topics here real quick. First, let's start with the Indians, who have been playing well as of late, Logan. We talk about the Indians they lost there on Friday, May 28th. They lost to the Toronto Blue Jays, 11-2. They lost to the Blue Jays again on Sunday, May 30th, 4-1. But then the Indians defeated Toronto at home at Progressive Field on Sunday in that doubleheader, 6-5. The Indians then hosted the Chicago White Sox on Monday, May 31st, and lost to them 8-6. However, since then, the Indians have won 3 in a row. In that doubleheader on the 31st, the Indians defeated Chicago 3-1. Then on this past Tuesday, Indians defeat Chicago again 6-5. But then they lost to the Orioles. So I apologize. It was a 2-game winning streak, not a 3-game winning streak. Indians fell to the Orioles yesterday by a final score of 3-1. But the Indians, in terms of standings, have not been affected too poorly here. They are 5-5 in their last 10, so haven't been as great as we would have hoped in these last 10 games, Logan. Now, they're now 4 games behind that first place spot. The Chicago White Sox still hold that first place standing in the American League Central Division. Indians in second place. They have a record of 30-25. And the Indians have some tough road games coming up here. They're going to need to win these games against these remaining 2 games against the Orioles. And then they're heading out to St. Louis for 2 matchups against the Cardinals before returning home for 3 matchups at Progressive Field against the Seattle Mariners. So Indians definitely have some challenges in their upcoming schedule. Logan, what have your thoughts been on how the Indians have played these last few games, and what are you expecting from them in these next upcoming games?
Well, I mean, they've been a little bit inconsistent. I mean, you mentioned the 2-game winning streak, which is good, but I'm going to talk about the past 2 weeks because that's how long we've been out for. So
right.
They've been on and off. It's been give a game, get a game, give a game, get a game. It seems like at a record of 30-25, they're still in a good spot to have a chance at the AL Central title. But they got to keep on pushing and pushing along because they are in the battle. Right. Guaranteed either way. The White Sox are on fire this season, but it's still, like I said, a race. When it comes to the bat, I've been really impressed with what I've seen. We've seen a lot of 6-4s, a lot of bigger numbers from the Indians, which is kind of what I wanted to see. But from a pitching standpoint, they haven't really performed. Yeah. I've seen also a lot of late-game heroics with batters in scoring position. Most notably in that doubleheader against the Blue Jays, in the second game of that doubleheader, I remember a sacrifice fly to right field by Jose Ramirez brought in the winning RBI, and that's what they need to do. The bases were loaded. They got the guys in a position so that their big numbers, their big names could bring them home, and they did. I think that is one of the most crucial parts of winning baseball, and the Indians have been that team all season long, I think, and I think that's what their has been. They continue to rely on that. They've got to get guys on. They play really, really well in the box. But, again, the depth from a step need to improve because even last night, the starter didn't go very long. Yeah. It was who was the starter last night? It was JC, right?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yes. And he only went 3 innings.
Yeah.
He went 3 innings. So, I understand you're deep with the relievers, but the problem is you've got to let your starters go. You've got to let them go until there's trouble. So, I give them a lot of credit. They've been hanging in there, but they've got to continue to see the ball well and keep getting those starters in deeper in the games.
And in these next upcoming games, Logan, Indians just lost to Baltimore last night. They have 2 more games against the Orioles. And then they have 2 games on the road in St. Louis before coming back for 3 more games against Seattle. So, Logan, what do you want to see from the Indians in these upcoming games? And do you think that they can win a few of these games in this upcoming road trip?
Well, they're going to need to win it. Like I I'm just looking to see a little bit more consistency. It's been get a game, give a game. And I don't like that. That's not how you win baseball. That's not how you go to the postseason.
Yeah.
They have to take the next 2 games in this road trip in Baltimore. And then in my opinion, this St. Louis team, they haven't been super consistent.
Right.
They've been similarly to the game past couple of weeks. So to me, it's got to be one of those series where you take both games.
Yeah.
You got to take both games before you go and play a Seattle team who has, again, struggled a little bit. So I think you've got to get these last 2 games for confidence. But I'm really looking forward. I think they need to win at least 3 of the next 5.
Yeah, it'll definitely be intriguing to see where the Indians go and what they can do on this road trip. Don't forget, fans, today, Indians playing the Orioles at 4:05 p.m. in Baltimore. Indians will face the Orioles again tomorrow afternoon at 1:05 in Baltimore to conclude that 3-game road trip. Indians then head out to St. Louis for 2 games before heading back to Progressive Field for games against the Mariners and the Orioles. The Indians will then head out to Pittsburgh closer to the end of June for matchups with the Pirates. Logan and I will get into those matchups in our next episode of the podcast. And Logan, I really appreciate you hanging on with me today. I know it's been a much longer episode. We had all the playoff breakdown and everything. We have one more topic of discussion that was intriguing to me, and it's about Julio Jones, Logan. The wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons has stated his displeasure in being with the franchise, and this is a guy who last year did have 3 touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns. That's the lowest it's been for Julio Jones since 2017. Now, he's had a terrific career with the Atlanta Falcons, and Atlanta has had such a high-powered offense these last few years in the NFL. Their defense has been suspect at times, though. So when you look at the Julio Jones situation, Logan, what do you think would be the best? Where do you think would be the best place for him if he doesn't continue his career in Atlanta? Because it seems that he's not pleased with being there anymore. So what team do you think should definitely consider making a run at signing Julio Jones?
Well, I think there's 2 marquee things that Julio Jones should have on his bucket list when it comes to teams. I'm not going to give you any particular teams because I'm going to let your imagination choose a team based on these expectations I think Julio Jones should have. One, he's got to be looking for a team that can win a championship. He has to.
Yeah.
He's never won one, and I think that's got to be on his list of things that he has to do.
Right.
And then second, I think despite him being a very, very talented wide receiver in the NFL still at his age, needs to look for a team that he's not the marquee number 1 guy. He needs to find a team that has one other B+ A- level receiver. And as much as it pains me to say that, considering I am a Patriots fan, I think he needs to look for a team that will compete and him not be the only guy him not be the off. So, an example. Cleveland, for one. Still a little excitement there. Cleveland is definitely a team that you could consider, just to give an idea. But those are the 2 major things to me that he has to look for, considering his age and his lack of a Super Bowl ring to this point. And
do you think that Julio Jones, Logan, if he were to stay in Atlanta, do you think that the Falcons would have any playoff aspirations or even a chance to get into even like the divisional round or possibly the Super Bowl if he does stay with the Falcons?
Well, I mean, if they keep Julio Jones, there's always playoff aspirations. I mean, when you have 2 very ultra-talented wide receivers, I mean, Julio Jones is obviously Julio Jones, and then Calvin Ridley had a really good year last year.
Right.
Matt Ryan is still playing all right. He's not Matt Ryan from 2 years ago, but he's Matt Ryan. The defense is semi there. It's sort of there. You know, you got Deion Jones, you got Grady Jarrett, you've got guys there. AJ Terrell in the secondary had a really good year as a rookie.
And don't forget they drafted.
You've got a decent running game.
And don't forget too, they drafted Kyle Pitts. Don't forget about that as well.
And you get Kyle Pitts, who could be one of the best tight ends in the NFL next year.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. That's my big take for the NFL. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But I don't know. I definitely wouldn't consider this team a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
We're still talking about the Packers here. We're still talking about the Packers. There's a lot of teams in the National League. And then let's assume they were to make it to the Super Bowl. You're telling me they're going to have a run-in with the Chiefs? Or the Ravens?
Yeah, no way. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. So, to me, if they were to keep him, maybe they make it to a divisional round. Maybe.
Yeah, and
it's just not getting any farther than that.
Yeah, the Falcons last year didn't have a particularly great season, and we'll see what happens with Julio Jones moving forward. And now the Aaron Rodgers rumors are starting to percolate now. So this is going to be a really interesting offseason, Logan, with the NFL season still a few months away, but still some spicy topics with the league. Well, Logan, that concludes our episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Really appreciate you hanging in with me for a much longer episode. I really thank you so much for breaking down every single playoff matchup with me in the NBA, and then talking about some Indians updates and the Julio Jones trade rumors. I really appreciate your time this week. We'll see you soon for another episode of the podcast. Until then, have a terrific rest of your weekend, and thank you so much for your time, Logan.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for hanging in with us. We had a much longer episode, but so much to break down. I wasn't kidding you when I said that we had a lot to discuss. And to access more of my work on NordoniaHills.News and with Nordonia Hills Media, head to NordoniaHills.News. You can find all of my work on the Contributors tab. My name is the second one down. You'll be able to find it there. Just click on my name and you'll be able to see all of my previous episodes to the podcast, articles I've written for NordoniaHills.News, and if you keep scrolling down, you'll be able to find some of the play-by-play broadcasts I did for Nordonia High School boys basketball. Had a terrific season this year with the Knights. They had some very talented players, so you're definitely not going to want to miss out on those games if you didn't get a chance to listen to them and watch them as well. You can also find all of my work on Twitter. That's right, just type in my Twitter handle at Nordonia Sports, or you can type in my name spelled DARAYUSSETHNA into the Twitter search bar, and all of my work will be is on my Twitter page as well. Links to the podcasts, links to the articles on Nordonia Hills News, and also videos of my broadcasts of Nordonia Hills basketball. You can also find all of my work on the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page. That's right. So if you're ever on YouTube, just make sure you go to the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page, and then you can find all of my episodes of the podcast on there as well. And finally, I am very happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show, for about 2 years now, has been on Spotify. That's right. If you're on Spotify, just type in my name spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you will be able to get all of those episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show. Take the Cleveland Sports Show with you on the go. You can do that now wherever you are. It does not matter. As long as you have Spotify, then you have the Cleveland Sports Show podcast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for all of your time this week. We'll see you soon for another breakdown of the NBA playoffs. Now we're getting to the second round. Logan and I will continue to discuss Indians updates. We'll talk about the WNBA in our next episode as well, and possibly we might have some updates with Aaron Rodgers or Julio Jones or any other NFL news. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for your time, and have a wonderful weekend.